So guys, if you haven't seen Invincible yet, spoilers are abound. You have been warned. My leg! What's up? What's going on, people? I've recently seen this video spinning around the internet, and I think it's a very interesting conversation to have, especially since my animation background and the fact that I do digital art for a side living as well, and I dabbled into animation quite a bit in my past. I'm actually showing a little snippet and tidbit right here. So I actually know a little bit about animation, compositing, and basically doing stuff like that behind the scenes, and I know how much energy and effort it takes to actually put this stuff out, even on massive studio levels. I know the process of it. This guy recently came out, I guess his name is Mr. Headcanon, and he's not that big of a channel, but he put out a video called Why Invincible Can't Have Better Animation. And I thought this was interesting because if you guys have seen One Punch Man, the downgrade from season 1 to season 2 is noticeable for a person who has an eye to see it. But for the normal person who's just watching these shows just to watch it, right? You're not going to notice the difference as much as let's say an animator would, but we understand why it happens. So Invincible season 3, I think he's going to talk about why season 3 looks different from season 1 or even 2, because if you can see it, you know what we're talking about. We got that eye, you know what I'm saying, to be able to pick that shit up. This is what interests me. I want to see his reasoning on why he's saying why Invincible can't have better animation. I think it's going to be a good art conversation, and it's going to be expanding people's understanding on who doesn't have the eye or the thought process to be an animator or to know anything about the art field. I think it's going to be very intriguing for y'all, because Invincible to me is one of my favorite cartoons that came out in a very long time. Regardless if it has bad animation or not, I still think the show is good, or if it did get a downgrade or not, which it has. But let's see the reasoning behind this. It's only a 10-minute video, so without further ado, let's jump in.
Invincible season 1 looked like this. Season 2 looked like this. And season 3 looks like this. Somehow, the animation got worse.
Interesting. See, the thing is, though, too, I'm pretty sure you guys know this with anime industries, cause I'm mainly involved with the anime industry, and I study that industry very heavily because it says it in my bio. I'm a digital anime artist, illustrator, character designer. I do it professionally. I do it on the side, such and such, right? So for the anime industry, what they do, and this is what all studios do, they do limited animation or techniques called limited animation. And sometimes it is done well to where people don't notice it, or they do it like this to where people do notice it, but it's not, but it's still passable. You know what I mean? It's just how it's done. Who is behind the scene and who was given the scene to animate and decided to not
It's like this.
do any movement.
Somehow.
See, for people with a trained eye, we can see that. But for people who don't, they're counting on those people watching the show. So it's just going underneath the radar, and they save time, money, effort, and staff. So that's probably the reason why they did that.
The animation got worse with each season. There's less use of lighting and shadows, the backgrounds have fewer details, the character designs and expressions are simpler, and there are way more static scenes. In season 3, they even reused shots from season 2, thinking we wouldn't notice.
Yeah, the only people who wouldn't notice this is people without the untrained, with the untrained eye. But people like me, I noticed dozens of scenes in Invincible season 3 that were reused. Dozens. And even in season 2, I've seen a couple that was reused for season 1. They're going to do this anyway, and this is a shortcut that most animation studios do. But I don't know why Amazon, with the budget that they have, is taking shortcuts like this. It's no excuse. Because if this studio was made by a Japanese studio, right, and they had the budget and the staff that Amazon is able to provide for a show like Invincible, you would not see none of these this will probably look like a fucking animated movie. So I don't know what Amazon is doing.
But how is that even possible? How can the writing keep getting better while the animation gets worse? It's almost funny how fans can recreate scenes from the show with even more detail, smoother movements, and stronger personality.
This takes a lot of fucking time though. Compositing, and listen, I'm not giving an excuse to Amazon. Amazon should be able to do this. They should definitely have the time, money, and resources to be able to do this shit in every single shot. There's no excuse. You're a multi-billion-dollar company, and Invincible is bringing you it's probably one of your most profitable shows on the platform. People come to Amazon to watch The Boys, Invincible, and what's that other show that's on Amazon too? I think Yellowstone is on there too as well. But either way it go, these are your big 3. Invincible is racking in a lot of money. So why can't you invest in, I don't get that. I don't.
These fan-made scenes have a cinematic feel, like they're straight out of a big-budget Hollywood film. You might prefer a different style, but there's no denying that they stand out more than the original scenes, which look flat and lifeless. Sometimes it looks like they're sliding a PNG across the screen.
Yeah, that's just compositing right there. And when I seen that scene, of course, me, you know, being an animator, I already know what they're doing with this scene. When they were showing this scene to where like it was like comic panels and stuff, right? And a lot of people do this too, especially with comic movies or comic book adaptations of cartoons that get animated. They use the excuse or the reasoning that, hey, we just wanted to simulate the comic panels, but it actually makes it easier for you, and it could be considered laziness, just for you to make it look like it's a comic slide panel, because you don't have to do much work. All you have to do is compositing, and it's just 2 layers on top. This layer back here is blurred, and this layer up here is not. And it's sliding across each other. That's the compositing that they did with this scene. A multi-billion-dollar company is doing this technique when it comes to animating a fight scene. It should not, there's no excuse, but I still like this fight scene. But at the end of the day, there's no excuse.
They're sliding a PNG across the screen.
Unacceptable.
We can explain Invincible's poor animation with just 2 words: money and time. The 2 things Invincible doesn't have.
Which
you might
is
think it's a
crazy.
multi-million-dollar show just because the Prime Video logo appears in the intro. But in 2023, Marge Dean, one of the executive producers, said that Invincible had only a quarter of the budget of The Boys. That show cost
That is embarrassing. Wait, let me see this.
$11 million per episode, which is
That's nothing still. That's absolute, what? I thought that The Boys had more of a budget than that.
costs $11 million per episode, which is already on the low side for a top-tier series. To give you an idea of
Wow.
what Prime Video usually spends, Citadel costs $50 million per episode,
Yep.
and Rings of Power costs $58 million.
You gonna give this abomination of a show 58 million, close to 60? Bro, just imagine. Okay, listen, nobody's watching the show, right? Listen, I even forgot that Rings of Power even existed. Remember when I brought up you know, the big 3 on how many what people come to Amazon to watch? I forgot about Citadel. Citadel is actually okay, I can see that. But Rings of Power got 60 mil. Just imagine if you gave 60 mil to Invincible and you're gonna give it to a show that nobody watches, respects, or even remembers. You just flush this money down the toilet, because as a Lord of the Rings fan, I'm a Lord of the Rings nerd. I gave the show a chance when it first came out, strictly because I'm a Lord of the Rings nerd, right? And I even knew that it was going to be shitty, but I just wanted to see if there was a saving grace in it. I watched it for probably maybe 5 episodes, and now I just stopped watching it. I forgot about it. I moved on. And I put it in the back recesses of my memory, and it just completely faded away. $60 million forgotten. And you could have gave that shit to Invincible, which I'm still watching today. That's embarrassing. Or The Boys even, shit.
If we take Marge Dean's statement seriously, we'd have to divide 11 by 4, which leaves us with just $2.75 million per episode.
That's
Financially
crazy.
speaking, that's monopoly money. I know it seems like a huge number to us regular folks making minimum wage, but keep in mind that those $2 million cover the total budget for each episode. That money isn't just for the animators. It also covers the writers, directors, composers, editors, colorists, and voice actors who take a big chunk of the budget. Invincible has some very well-known actors who probably get paid really well, like Stephen Yeun.
Yeah, that's the thing. Stephen Yeun, and then you got Omni-Man's voice, and then you got Cecil. You got, bro,
and
yeah.
J.K. Simmons.
Yeah.
That $2 million isn't enough to hire the best animators out there. And there's also not enough money to expand the team and get more people working on Invincible. A show like this should have a massive team because the comic is packed with action, explosions, and superpowers. But seasons 2 and 3 only had about 10 animators per episode.
What? Are you kidding me? Your biggest show on Amazon only has 10 animators. I don't think you understand how bad that is. That's terrible. Wow. No one, bro, Amazon is shitting on this show.
A show like this should have a massive team because the comic is packed with action, explosions.
Yeah, this fight with Conquest is going to be the shit. If you guys haven't seen season 3, remember I told you spoilers at the beginning. And if you still watching this shit and getting mad at seeing spoilers and shit, it's your fault. It's your fault.
Invincible. A show like this should have a massive team because the comic is
This fight is going to be crazy. I can't wait for this fight.
packed with action, explosions, and superpowers. But seasons 2 and 3 only had about 10 animators per episode, the same number as X-Men 97. That show looks way better than Invincible, but Marvel was able to pull off that level of detail and smoothness because its episodes are half the length. Invincible's episodes are 40 minutes long, double the standard runtime for animated TV shows.
Yeah, that's the thing that surprised me with Invincible when it first came out. I don't think I can remember any animated TV show that has an hour's length when it comes to episodes. I don't think it ever happened actually though. When you add that into the equation to where every episode has to be an hour long and you only give them $2.7 million per episode, these people are literally grabbing shit and creating diamonds out of it. They have nothing to work with because Amazon is not even fucking raw. And there's still, okay, let me tell you how skillfully these people are, right? These people got half the budget. Their episodes are an hour long. Amazon is basically treating you like a retarded stepchild and just giving you crumbs and expecting you to make gold out of it. And you still have one of the best shows on Amazon that people keep coming back to. That shows you how good the story is when it comes to Invincible. We're not even worried about the animation and how it looks. We're worried about, oh, what's going to happen next? That's how you know you got a jewel in your hands. And these animators are still pushing out something that is still watchable. It's not going to be like Seven Deadly Sins, because we all know about Seven Deadly Sins on the animation side. Everybody can, okay, listen, we're not even going to talk about that. But for Invincible, for people to still be watching the show and hungry for the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, these animators are killing it for what they're working with. 10 animators per episode. The fuck?
In an interview with Bleeding Cool, Marge Dean said they have to create twice as many assets as a normal animated show because Invincible has tons of different designs, models, and backgrounds.
Yeah.
And with a small team, that's really tough. Even the show's animators explain this in comments like this one. This user says they worked on the compositing team for seasons 2 and 3, and that they wish the show had a level of on the compositing team.
I actually was on the VFX and compositing team of Invincible for season 2 and 3. I appreciate the level of polish you attempted here. Trust me, when I tell you there are a lot of sequences where we would have wanted to take the final look to this level, but with most episodes having upwards of 200 plus visual FX shots, this just isn't feasible. And you know what? I believe him, given the delivery timelines. Also, the team was comprised of about 4 people, including the editor. Maybe if we had 10 plus compositors all taking shots, then maybe this is a big ass fucking thing. Why are they not providing them? I think it's animation bias, man. I think literally it's animation bias. And they do this on animated shows when it comes to being on a network that normally doesn't have animated shows. This is an animated original. They're not going to give money for an animated show because they still look at the show as a cartoon. That's the reason why. Cartoons have always been put on the back burner when it comes to live action shit. Always. They don't understand where the money is at. If you put money into the show and you have it boosted to the fidelity of, let's say, Chainsaw Man, even that, you know how many eyes you would bring to the show and how much more money you would get back? Bro, invest where your assets are. Invest where your success is. I don't get people. That shit is crazy.
Team for seasons 2 and 3, and that they wish the show had a level of detail similar to Arcane or Castlevania. But that was impossible with such a small team. There were only 4 people in their department, including the editor. Just 4 people to handle over 200 shots per episode. To help you understand why this is so important, compositing is the stage where all the elements on screen get put together. The characters, backgrounds, and effects.
Each person, if you guys aren't familiar with animation, each person on the team is tasked with a very specific part of this process. So for them to have 10 people, you know some animators or some compositors are sharing roles with other people. So it's going to take more. So it's like people doing twice the work at a multi-million-dollar studio. There's no excuse for this.
Backgrounds, and effects. This is also where lighting, shadows, and filters are added to make the final image look good, like in this scene from season 1. But if there's no time to work on this stage, the composition will be basic, and the characters will look pasted onto the background with no depth at all, like slapping PNGs onto a static photo. Compositing is what sets these two images apart.
I think I just learned something.
If Invincible had more than 10 VFX compositors, it would have looked way more cinematic. But to have a team that big, the show's budget would have needed to be bigger, like way bigger. Arcane, for example, had a budget of $14 million per episode.
Jesus, and it shows. It shows. And even this is low compared to how much money Arcane brings in. Whether you like Arcane or not, this show is highly successful, and most people only got Netflix because they wanted to watch Arcane or Stranger Things. So for them to only give it 14 mil, even that's low. But what they were able to do, and because Riot is behind it too, that's the reason why. What they were able to do with 14 million, it just shows. Invest your money where your fucking assets are. I don't get
5
this.
times more than Invincible. And Across the Spider-Verse, which is one of the best animated projects ever, cost $110 million. Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, the film's directors, said their team had over 1,000 animators from all over the world. Invincible has just 10 animators per episode, and some episodes have even fewer. It's not that these animators lack talent, skill, or motivation. They just can't keep up with the workload. I know this won't be a popular opinion, but we should actually be grateful that the show looks the way it does.
Facts. Didn't I just say that? The fact that they were able to do this with 10 animators per episode is a fucking miracle. I didn't even know that. These guys are gods actually behind the scenes. For them to come, bro, that's insane. Kudos to them. Amazon should be ashamed of themselves for this.
And not way worse. The real culprit is Jeff Bezos and the execs at Prime Video, who didn't want to invest properly in the adaptation of one of the best superhero comics ever.
Cheapness is not a sense.
And I already know what you're thinking. None of this explains how a fan managed to do this from their own home, or why the teasers look way better than the full episodes, or how Demon Slayer looks infinitely better despite having a budget of just $80,000 per episode. That's only 4% of Invincible's budget. Wasn't a huge budget supposed to be necessary to do things right? It is, but that's where time comes in. Season 1...
See, money is one thing. Time is the biggest factor. If you don't have time to spend your money, you are not going to get valuable shit. If somebody gave you $1 million to spend it in a day, what would you get? You don't even know. Because to tell you the truth, you never had $1 million, but the short time span that you have to spend it is detrimental to what you're going to spend it on. And sometimes you're going to spend it on bullshit because you don't have time to think about it. When people who are in an animation studio have a budget of $80,000, but they have a time span of about 1.5 years or 3 or 4 years, right? They have plenty of time to work with that money and to make something that's actually valuable. But if you have 14 million and you have only a year to come up with 8 episodes of a show, right? Or even more than that, it's going to show. Time is the biggest fucking factor, so I'm glad he brought that up.
It was in production for almost 3 years, from 2018 to 2021. Even with a small team, they had enough time to create beautiful animations like this one, and put more effort into compositing, which is the weakest part of the later seasons. Of course, they use classic tricks to save time and money, like using CGI for backgrounds and vehicles, or hiding characters' mouths in less important scenes, so they only had to animate the eyes when they're talking. But that happens in every animated show, even the ones with way bigger budgets. And yeah, I know there were a few infamous scenes, like this one, that turned into memes. But the fight scenes, the ones that needed the most movement and energy, were good. They knew how to hide the lack of budget and staff, and the same thing should have happened in Season 2, but that wasn't the case. It took them 2.5 years to release Season 2 at the end of 2023, and they even split it in half. We had to wait 4 more months for the last episodes, which only dropped in March 2024, and the result was worse than Season 1.
That doesn't make any sense.
But actually it does, because they switched to animation studios between seasons. Season 1 was made by a coalition between Skybound, Robert Kirkman's company, and Winsun Sky, a studio in Vancouver. They had teams in LA, and even hired some freelance animators from Korea and Japan, which is pretty common for American shows. But
yeah, because they know the talent over there is just undeniable. But the thing is, though, the reason why the first season always look better than the second or third, I'm just going to be honest with you guys for y'all to know this. They don't have the fans, I would say, pressure on them when it comes to putting out more. Once you bring out the first season, right, that you have time to create, to basically, to make something, because you're not even sure if it's going to be a hit or not. So you got to put your best. First impressions is everything. So once you get the first impression out, you have time to build this up. You don't have fans' expectations. Nobody's like, God, when is this Invincible coming out? When is this X? You haven't seen it yet. But when Season 1 comes out and you get greenlit for Season 2, oh, the race is on. You don't have that pressure when you're coming out with Season 1 for the first time. So yeah, they had plenty of time to work on this. But as soon as Season 1 was over and people wanted Season 2 and it got greenlit, when is Season 2 coming out? Now you're on a time budget restraint. That's the reason why this shit happens.
When Prime Video renewed the series for Season 2 and 3, Skybound decided to build its own animation division, to be independent. They hired Marge Dean to create Skybound Animation and put her in charge of producing Season 2. That decision impacted the entire schedule. Marge Dean said that when she joined Skybound, she had to start everything from scratch.
Wow.
There was no studio, no staff, just Kirkman, Corey Walker, the comics artist, and Simon Rasiopa, one of the executive producers. They had to hire new animators, animators and set up a physical studio in LA, which was complicated by the pandemic. The animators only really started working in 2022, so they had way less time than they did for season 1. This was confirmed by Katrin Snodgrass, one of the people in charge of the storyboards for seasons 2 and 3.
I was hired as a storyboard revisionist in April of 2022 to work on the Adam Eve special. It actually took only a year, and we made 2 seasons at once.
Meanwhile,
That's crazy. These people are crazy. They're good. They're good.
Meanwhile, Skybound outsourced the teasers.
Took only a year, and we made 2 seasons at once.
Meanwhile, Skybound outsourced the teasers to Balak, the co-creator of Last Man. That's why the teasers have Mappa-level animation. A separate team worked exclusively on 2 short teasers, while the main team worked on the full season. Prime Video tricked us with these animation changes, but
they did, because to tell you the truth, this right here could be considered false advertisement. Because during these 2 teasers when this came out, we was expecting season 3 to look like this. We was like, oh, they actually got a budget now. As soon as I seen these teasers, I was like, oh, wow, they actually got a bigger budget. Thank God Amazon is actually investing. They shouldn't have showed it like this. Because this was literally a fuck you. Because as soon as the season 3 came out, all of a sudden, you get none of this. That's literally false advertisement.
Expecting this level of quality for every episode would be ridiculous. We're comparing a 2-minute teaser to an 8-episode season where each episode is 40 minutes long. Besides, we can't underestimate the power and passion of a studio that's all about making horny furry stuff.
I'm a little turned on.
Back to the show. Switching animation teams between seasons affected the overall style. They used less CGI and went for more hand-drawn scenes. But since they had less time to work, some scenes ended up looking way too static. The best example is the battle between Omni-Man, Mark, and the Viltrumites on Thraxia. It should have been one of the best moments in the entire show, at least up to that point. But half of the fight felt like a slideshow, and the composition wasn't as polished as in season 1. They had to split the season in 2 because they just couldn't keep up. Kirkman justified the split by saying they didn't want to release episodes during the holidays, and that they wanted Invincible to have a new season every year. But Rasiopa admitted they made the decision while production was already underway because they ran into problems. No one on the team wanted to say exactly what went wrong, but it's no coincidence that episode 4 had the worst animation in the entire show. I have no doubt that they were running out of time and had to delay the last episode simply because they weren't finished yet. If you don't believe me, listen to what Kirkman said in an interview with The Ringer. Coming from the live action world, I'm like, animation is like comics. There's no budget. We can do whatever we want. It's not exactly true, which is possibly the reason for some of our delays, because we had a big appetite and unrealistic expectations, and those kinds of things take time. That's the key word, time. The fan who reworked the composition of these shots,
he had time. Especially if he wasn't getting paid from a studio or anything like that. So this is the reason why too. Yeah, I said this before myself. If one person could do this, how come in a multi-million-dollar studio can't, right? YouTubers have nothing but time in order to create stuff that are magical and are way better than what studios can produce, strictly because of the key word, like he just said, time. Time is very valuable. So yeah, the reason why he's able to do this is because he's not constrained by studio time restraints. That's the reason why he's able to do this to this level. So yeah, one person can do this, absolutely. But how much time did he have? These studios don't have the time.
Said it took them 4 hours per shot. And earlier I mentioned that each episode has over 200 shots. That means at least 800 hours of work per episode just for compositing. An absolutely insane amount of time. Japanese studios can pull that off because their animators literally work 20-hour days. There have been cases where they had to sleep in the office, like what happened to Cloverworks staff during the production of Wonder Egg Priority. Sure, Japanese studios deliver better results for less money. Shows like Jujutsu Kaisen, Chainsaw Man, and Dandadan have way better animation than Invincible, but they pull it off by overworking their animators to the extreme.
That's the thing about Japanese culture. They have a work. And the thing is, though, that's why our shit would never compare, because their work ethic over there, and I understand, it's slave labor. 20 hours of animation would drive me fucking insane. I would not want to do it. I don't advise anybody to do anything for 20 hours straight. I don't. So yeah, that's the reason why they're able to produce a lot more results, because of time. But it's how they use their time. See, it should be longer schedules, not more hours throughout a day. You should be working probably maybe 8, maybe 10 hours a day, maybe less than that, working on animation, but you should have a longer schedule in order for you to compensate when it comes to that. There shouldn't be these type time restraints to where it's like, we got to have this done by this time, and it's unreasonable. That's unreasonable.
They work in miserable conditions for ridiculously low wages.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in the US, where working conditions are much better. Of course, there's still room for improvement. Sony ran into problems for overworking the animators on Across the Spider-Verse. But in the US, people don't jump off buildings just because they couldn't finish an episode on time. For Invincible to look better, they'd need to take at least 3 years between seasons, and they'd need to hire more people. But that's never gonna happen. With the insane amount of content out there, thanks to the streaming wars, waiting 3 years for a new season is way too long. Invincible already risked losing relevance because of the long wait since 2021. If they kept doing that, people would just forget about the show. The ratings would tank, and Prime Video would cancel it before they even finished adapting the comic.
That's why they need to fucking hire more people. What these people don't understand is, in order for you to fix this issue, you hire more people. It's simple. More people, that time restraint will balance out. If you have more people to do any task, you could get it done quicker. Duh, 2 heads is better than 1. You heard of that scenario? I don't understand. Bro, this is an easy problem to fix.
Sure, there have been animated shows that made fans wait forever and still managed to stay popular, like Attack on Titan. They took 3 years to release season 2 and split the final season into 1,000,000 parts, but the anime still kept its hype. But in the worst case scenario, Invincible could end up like Tower of God season 2. Not even the animators' families watched that thing.
I'm not gonna watch it.
To make things worse, this is a really long series. Kirkman said he wants to do 7 or 8 seasons to cover the entire comic, so we're not even halfway there.
Nope.
If we had to wait 3 years between each season, the show wouldn't wrap up until 2037, if we're lucky. It's a shame that Prime Video won't invest more in Invincible. With a bigger budget, the show could look way better, even if they wanted to release a season every year. It wouldn't be a visual masterpiece like Jujutsu Kaisen, but at least the fights would do the comic justice.
Absolutely.
And no one would say this is their favorite show, despite the average animation. But the crazy thing is, despite all these production issues, Invincible has still managed to surpass Marvel and DC. We explain how he did it in this video over here.
I'll see you around, Invincible.
This is a very good video, and I think he explained it pretty good, and he had tackled all the things that I thought that he might tackle too, and he did his research on this too as well. But for me, having animation understanding, I know how to fix this issue in like 2 seconds. It's very easy to do this, and Amazon has the money and the budget to be able to do it. They just choose not to. So the reason why, it actually looks like this to people who can see it is because, number one, let's just cut the fluff. Time and staff. If you don't have time and staff, 10 animators per episode for an hour-long episode is fucking ridiculous. I never even expected that. I thought they had more, to tell you the truth. You couldn't pay me to think that they would have just 10. That shit is crazy. Yeah, let me give this guy a like. I'm gonna subscribe to his channel. He's pretty small, so I like that. I like supporting channels like that, including mine, because I'm small as fuck too. But yeah, we'll get there eventually. 600K views in 4 days. Yeah, this video is going viral. He actually said something that a lot of people was thinking. So yeah, I like this. I like this video. And quite frankly, I might talk about something else that's kind of like this as well, because I think a lot of more people are interested in these type of animation topics though. I didn't know that. But apparently there's an ear for this type of conversation. So yeah, without further ado, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
My leg!